Welcome. This is Editor's View, and I'm Mithun Mustafiz. Today, I'll be talking about Corona crisis and diplomacy of the globe. I'm joined by the scholarly diplomat and analyst of the two countries from Bangladesh and India. Let me introduce you my guest today, Ambassador Humayun Kabir, who was a career diplomat for 30 years. He retired from the government service as secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Bangladesh in September 2010. His last assignment was in Washington, D.C. as an ambassador of Bangladesh. Mr. Kabir, who served as Bangladesh ambassador to Nepal and High Commissioner to Australia and New Zealand. Mr. Kabir is the acting president of Bangladesh Enterprise Institute. And with me, Ambassador Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, a former member of the Indian Foreign Service. He has served as Indian diplomatic missions in Cairo, in Jeddah, and in London. Later was High Commissioner to Dhaka. He served as a Special Secretary Public Diplomacy before he was appointed Secretary Economic Relations in the Ministry of External Affairs, India. He retired from the service in September 2013. Currently, P. Chakrabarti is a visiting fellow of Observer Research Foundation in India. He oversees West Asia Initiative, Bangladesh, and selected ASEAN issues. Welcome to the show's ambassadors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Before we go into the discussion, let me show you the global scenario of the coronavirus pandemic. I have some statistics at hand. The world infection 52 lakh, 13,483. Recovery 20 lakh, 58,124. Death 3 lakh, 38,224. In Bangladesh, infection 32,000 plus. Death 452. In India, infection 1,25,101 and death 3,720. Well, this is the scenario now, gentlemen, how this region is fighting coronavirus. If Ambassador Kabir, put your thoughts first.
Thank you very much, Mithun. And let me also start by thanking Channel 52 for having us on board. Well, we are in a very difficult and extraordinary situation. COVID-19 has, I would say, tormented the world. It's not only Bangladesh, India, or South Asia. The whole world is now is fighting this virus. And we know that the price, every country has to pay a very steep price for this. And in Bangladesh also, you have just mentioned that we are still struggling to cope with this virus. And I hope that in South Asia, so far, we have been able to manage it reasonably, I would say, well, but the challenge still remains. Now, from the Bangladeshi perspective, or I would say that from the entire South Asian perspective or developing country perspective, as such, this COVID-19 crisis has exposed the various
Please continue.
lines that we have been talking about those issues for many years, because I remember that since 1980, early 80s, when the international community accepted you can say the neoliberal economic formula, which was later, I would say, formalized as a kind of Washington consensus. The idea behind that was that market should determine our economic relationship, and by implication, social, political, and other relationships also. And basically what happened was profit was the driving factor. And over a period of last 40 years, we have become more, I would say, the international community, most of the countries are now following that model, the neoliberal economic model. We are now better consumers, people are enjoying more. In terms of GDP growth rate, that we always say that is going up. So apparently it looked that the things are pretty much, I would say, in better shape.
All
But
right.
against that, we have been seeing also that inequality was growing. There are some scholars, Nobel laureate, they were talking about that. But our actually discussion was mainly at the theoretical point. Now, when COVID hit us, it actually broke up the veneer that we had and now exposed how divided the society could be. It became fractured from multiple dimensions. Let me mention a few of them. Number one is health, because COVID, when we're dealing with COVID-19, it has exposed how much we have become institutional, or I would say infrastructural in our approach,
I
instead
will
of
I will learn this point from you, and I'll directly get back to you to learn this point, sir. Let me go to Pinak Ranjan Chakraborty to learn how is India fighting coronavirus by now, because we have the stories coming out from different medias. We learn all about as you're witnessing, directly. What's your experience in India? How the country is fighting?
Well, I think by and large, given the size of our population, 1.3 billion people, and if you compare statistically, we are not doing too badly. I think, in the sense, it's sad to say that so many people have died, so many have been, but I think the rate of recovery is very good, and we have not lost many of our citizens, but much less than the many advanced countries. After all, India is still, I think, way down in the list of those in terms of numbers. But one of the reasons I would say is because we took certain steps fairly early, like stopping flights and having lockdowns, etc. It seems to have worked because one of the models, statistical and software models that was being used to predict as to how many victims or how many people will be afflicted, they had predicted by the middle of May, India will have 5.5 lakh COVID sort of patients, but that didn't
Okay.
happen. We now have about 1.25. So in some ways we have managed to sort of put up a wall somewhat, but it's not the end of the story. I think the infections are still coming in, and because of this massive movement of population, the migrant workers, etc., I suspect that in the next month or so, we will still see a rise. Till it actually, as we say, flattens out, and sort of, we can then say, okay, COVID has been beaten and now it's on a downward trend, which is bound to happen, I think, because it can't last forever. Now, the other thing, of course, is that slowly, because of the economic, consequences, the government has been obviously forced to open up the economy and allow people to go out, certain things to start working, etc. This will add, of course, to some of the infections that will spread because of people coming out on the road, etc. Now, I think what will happen now is that we will see a rising trend till about June, and then I think the curve will start going down. Because first of all, I think the weather has changed a lot, and people say that the weather has an impact. I'm not an expert, but I do believe that it will have an impact. So I think overall, India has done fairly well in the sense of, given our population, given our social structure, given the fact that social distancing is not something in our culture nor in South Asian culture. We want to sit, we want to maro adda when we sort of go out. So those things are not happening now. So I think this is, but people have been very conscious. I must say, I am watching every day how people are behaving, and I think the social responsibility that people have displayed is quite remarkable. Obviously, people are afraid of their lives, and I think that is one reason, perhaps, why people are behaving responsibly.
All right. Has India crossed the first phase of COVID attack? What your experts are saying right now? Are you crossed
Well,
the first phase?
I think so. I don't think there is a community spread yet, except
Okay.
for Bombay, where I think things are, or Mumbai as we call it now, where things are not very good. I think Maharashtra and Mumbai have the highest number of cases. And you know Mumbai, how big the city is, and how we have a lot of people living in very cramped quarters, which we call slums, etc. All big cities have that in South Asia. So I think those are some of the issues that are bothering us. And what, of course, I think this has exposed very, very starkly, not just for South Asia and we are developing countries, but also for the developed world, how their health infrastructure is not even the best in the world has not been able to cope with
All
this
right.
pandemic.
Chakraborty, I'll get back to you again. Where Kabir sir ended up, he was discussing a broader, portray of the COVID-19 situation. For his better understanding and better, discussion, I'd like to input him with information. Right, Bangladesh reports 1,873 new cases. A single day report as body count hits 452. How hard is the hit, do you think? If you put your thought on that.
Well, okay, thank you. What Ambassador Pinak has said, I mean, we are still on the upward slide. It's still growing. We have not yet stabilized, or it has not yet plateaued, and then it can go down. So now we are still, as I said, growing, and I hope that if things go as they are now, by the end of June, perhaps we might see that stabilizing and then going down. But up until that, we had a couple of bumps along the way. For example,
Mhm.
few weeks back, there was huge movement of people. Now, with Eid occasion, people are moving from city to country, village areas, and then they will come back. So there is an open area. We don't know how it will work out. But expert, I'm not an expert, but health experts are thinking that this could perhaps create an enabling environment for further spread. I hope not. So we are, as Mr. Pinak has said, that uh, compared to the prediction that we had seen, the ground
Mhm.
reality has been managed better so far. But that doesn't,
Yeah.
prevent, or that doesn't cancel out the possibility that it will remain so. So we need to be extremely cautious, proactive, and make the people conscious, because now what we are seeing in a Bangladeshi context particularly, government has, in a way, government tried initially to ensure lockdown and other measures. Now they have come to the conclusion that at the end of the day, people themselves will have to take care of their own interest. And there, I think, if people understand that this is a serious problem, they will have to defend their own interests, own health. Then I think situation would improve. Now, but I would like to indicate or mention here that although there are many issues involved here, the first challenge that we are now fighting is the health issue,
Mhm.
how to save lives.
Mhm.
Then, just alongside that is coming the economic issue, because people are now, they will have to leave, and that's why the issue that, I mean, we are struggling in whole of South Asia, perhaps, how to ensure livelihood. And there, I think this is a balance that we are trying to strike. I don't know where this balance would come, but there is a fear that if we open up, then again this social distance policy or practice could not be materialized or could be compromised. That if we do that, we allow the free movement of people, then free mixing could spread the virus and so on and so forth. So we are struggling, and perhaps we are learning through that struggle. And I would say that this is a global learning. We shouldn't be ashamed of, or we should be unnecessarily be hesitant about that. Nobody knew this would happen. And for every country, every society, this is a new kind of context, new kind of crisis that has blown up on our face, and we
Definitely,
have to now
we
deal
will
with it.
definitely try to go into the new chapter. of this pandemic, definitely. Before going into that episode, let me learn from Pinak Ranjan Chakraborty. The single day hit Bangladesh witnessed today. The same thing happened in India today. As the Union Health Ministry said today, India has registered, the total of 1,25,101 cases. The country has registered 3,720 deaths today. As far as 6,054 coronavirus cases in 24 hours, the biggest single day spike in India reported so far. How harder is the hit to the people who are really living their life hand to mouth?
Well, I think, as I said before, we were expecting that it would go up because of the people moving out of the cities, the informal working, the migrant labor, as we call it, who are moving back into their villages, into trains. We are going to start flights also from the 25th, domestic flights. So I
Yes.
think these are all sort of actions that the government is taking, keeping in mind the kind of sort of figures that are coming in on COVID. I think the strategy is that we have to accept more sort of figures, more deaths, more etc. But at the same time, have a judicious, slow opening of all the sectors basically,
Yes.
like travel. I mean, it's not fully open, and I think it is all through a level, as Humayun said, through learning from the process of opening up as to what kind of an impact it's having on the figures. So I think this is a process. After all, there is no template or experience that we have of the past that we can measure all these things. So that we are handicapped by that. But then every government has to take that decision. And I think but we were trying to balance the two. And I don't
Okay.
think in the beginning we were pretty rigid about the lockdown, etc. So that we thought first let's drill it into our people that this is a bad thing. You better stay at home, otherwise you'll all die. So I think that kind of a fear was driven in, right? And rightly so. But then later on, we realized that now the government realized that you can't have a lockdown forever. You have to have slow kind of opening up. We are in fact in that phase now. We call it lockdown 4, and I believe the next phase will be called lockdown 5, and more things will be opening up. We have, for example, opened up shopping centers, not malls, by the way, not theaters, not schools, not
Yes.
colleges, not large gatherings, but slow, for example, every alternate shop is being allowed to open, odd even, we call it, so that there is not much of crowding. And obviously, social distancing practices are being encouraged and being maintained. But these are in urban areas. In villages, I don't know what's going to happen once all these people go back. I don't know how many. Of course, they're all conscious. They are watching television, but you never know. They might have some kind of a feast, and people get together, and and we pass. One guy can pass it on to the whole village. So, we are still in that phase. After all, our villagers, though conscious of the fact because they watch TV,
Yes.
literacy levels are much higher. And I think, and everybody worries about their health and those of their family members. But, we are still in that gray zone, in my view, that we cannot categorically say that it is not going to increase. I suspect it will go up till June, July, and after that it will start coming down. That's my view, and I may be completely wrong, and I'm not an expert, but I think that's the trend, it seems. And I think the government has no option. I think no government has any option but to slowly open up. You can't, as I said, the RBI governor has already said India will have negative growth this year. And I was looking at Bangladesh's figures for exports, for example. I think there are similar, huge sort of fall in exports in the months of April and May. And so this is the kind of impact we are having. And industries have closed down, the small sectors have closed down, people have lost jobs. And so it's a huge problem. I don't know how we are going to come out of it, but I suppose we must be optimistic. We must realize that that hope springs eternal in the human breast, as we say, and we will all come out of it. But there will be huge losses.
Definitely. In line with your explanation, may I add a point that ILO says if the lockdown continues, 160 crore people may lose their job. It's the biggest hit against the economy of the globe. In line with this question, may I ask Ambassador Kabir how much derailment has happened in advancement by the heat of the corona pandemic? Can you explain?
Are you talking about the economic
Yeah,
impact?
all losses.
Uh, okay.
Should not
Human
should not
losses
be
we have
absolute, should
already.
not be correct, but you should have
Uh,
approximately you should have some concept about the losses of all areas of our life,
oh,
of our
thank you,
global life,
thank
I
you.
should say. Yes.
Right. Well, I mean, health-wise or human cost, we have already known. You have mentioned that unfortunately, we have lost people in all the countries, including India, Bangladesh, and globally. It is happening. People are dying. It's very unfortunate. We should have saved them, but we couldn't. That's the reality. Despite all our best efforts, despite progress of science, medical technology, and everything. But now the secondary level impact that are going to affect us could be equally painful. For example, let me tell you, Ambassador Pinak was mentioning about the slowdown in economy. We are in Bangladesh. We have been talking about 8% growth rate just a few weeks ago. It's not that far. Now, yes, we are saying that we'll be still doing reasonably well, 6%, 7%. That is what the new budget would perhaps project. But if we look at the reality, let's see if we are, whether we agree or not, despite the fact that a lot of questions are being raised about whether globalization will remain or go away, the fact is that we are globally connected. And since we are connected, all the global main economic centers have been affected badly. You have mentioned at one point about the 40 million Americans have lost their jobs already.
Yes.
European Union, almost similar situation. Japan already in recession. China is already, Chinese government yesterday in their national plenary, National Assembly, they have not indicated the next year's GDP projection even, because they know that it's very uncertain, so they have refrained from giving any figure. Now, what we do, what India does, what Bangladesh does, we import raw materials from different countries, add value, and then export to other destinations. Now, our import destinations, our two major import destinations are China and India. Both are affected. Pinak
Yes.
has already mentioned that India is in difficulty. So that will obviously have some impact on us. China is our number one import source. China is devastated, although we are not getting as much as information as we would love to have, because the Chinese society is different. They can control information and so on and so forth. And that has brought in a lot of difficulties for China now with the COVID-19 problem. Now go to the Europe and America. Our two major destinations for our product, particularly the garments, which is 80% of our export, is EU and US. Both the markets
Yes.
are really, really shattered. Now, with this kind of situation, we have to be realistic in our assessment. We now know that our import sources and export destinations all are being affected. Now, another area where we get money from, remittance. And bulk of our workers work in the Middle East, almost 80%, or some in Malaysia, some in Europe. All these destinations are already in great difficulty. And Lord, we are bringing in a lot of people, and my sense is that more would be coming, because unless they get work there, what they will do, how they will feed themselves. So they will have to come back. It means except the agriculture sector. Other
Yes.
sectors of economy are in
Oh,
difficulty.
all right. Okay. All right. They will have to come back. From that point, let me get back to P. Chakraborty again. We were talking about derailment in advancement. How much derailment may take place in advancement of our countries? Maybe in India, maybe Bangladesh, maybe the globe. As you have seen the globe as a diplomat, as a career diplomat. Both of you were secretary, right? So you have definitely a cross concept of our advancement and derailment. If you add a few more points with Ambassador Kabir's view, P. Chakraborty.
Well, I think as we've talked about in general the economic setback that we will all have. I think a lot of the infrastructural projects. I think we'll have to increase investments in infrastructure. Apart from the fiscal stimulus that is coming in from the Reserve Bank, which has recently revised the repo rate, etc. But the banks, are having problems. They are unable to lend, for example, to their normal customers because the industries are not starting, because the labor has gone home. Now, this is going to take some time. Once the government announces that yes, things are going back to normal, but no government will want to do it overnight because of the infection that can rapidly spread because of if you just open it up normally. So I think there will be a phased opening up. Two things I want to mention about
Yes.
about this whole business of COVID. One, of course, is the role of China, because China is a major trading partner of India. We have a trade of almost $100 billion, which unfortunately we suffer the adverse trade imbalance of almost 60, $70 billion. But that is how it is. That is how trade happens. How China will shape up after COVID, what kind of information we can get from them, how China handles all this. I am depressed by the fact that the way China is handling this, and I think the whole world is, worried about the way the virus was allowed to spread, the way by mistake or missteps,
that, that, that,
by
that,
whatever
that,
you call
the
it.
way you are depressed, China is handling the pandemic, the same way President Donald Trump is depressed.
I'm
And
sure
today
he
he
is.
takes
He's
us into
terribly
depression.
depressed, and that is
That's
why you are
China.
seeing the kind of reaction against China that is coming. You had mentioned the listing of the Chinese companies, etc.
Yeah, I told
He
you.
has
Yeah,
taken,
I told
he
you.
has signed a lot of
Yes,
executive orders.
yes, I informed you before we
Yes,
initiated this talk. I informed both of you that US bans 800 companies owned by China, all the people who has got share in Chinese economy. The Senate approved this decision. Maybe hit by 30 lakh, crore Indian rupees equally. It's a big hit, I should say, against Chinese economy. How should China cover it up? The company includes, of course, Alibaba and Baidu, such a bigger companies among those 800.
so that is what I was saying, that there is a backlash building up in America, certainly because President Trump has now decided that he is going to act fairly harshly against Chinese companies, Chinese products. He has banned for example, chips from going anywhere into China, from even those which were sort of produced abroad with American machines and technology. You will now need an export license. So anyway, that is the US's sort of way of dealing with China, putting pressure, because after all, these two major countries are now locked, in my view, in a cold war, and I think that cold war is going to continue for decades now, till there is some other understanding later on. China itself will, of course, is flexing its muscles. We are seeing how it was, how the people, how it was dealt with in the WHO recent World Health Assembly, where there was a resolution. But China obviously had to accept that there would be a review of what really happened. Now, as a result of that review, we will know what happened Hopefully, China will cooperate, but I doubt it because the Chinese system being what it is, the current president having, appointed himself for life now, that's the kind of system they run. So it's not transparent, and we cannot really depend on information coming out of China, which we can believe. It will be
You were
doctored
emphasizing,
information.
you were emphasizing on the point that China should allow the investigation as UN wants, or as WHO wants, or as
Look, China has already
The American
China
president.
has the resolution passed at the WHA, the World Health Assembly, talks about a review, a systemic review of what really happened, and China has accepted that. So that is not the point. And I think China also realizes there is also domestic pressure in China as to, people are asking because of what really happened. There are a lot of whistleblowers, as they say, within China who are also talking about all this. So today things cannot be really hidden in the sense that earlier it could be done before the age of digital media, social media. So the Chinese Communist Party, the one party rule that they run, certainly will have to factor all these things into it. So I expect China will cooperate to the extent it wants to, and if pushed beyond that point, it will cooperate a little more. But I think they are also watching, waiting as to what is going to happen, what kind of
Yes.
it's a geopolitical game that is going on at the moment as far as China is concerned. But let's get back to the economy because that is where the real hit will be taken by common people and the people of our countries, particularly in South Asia. And things are going to
If
be
I
very bad.
Ambassador Chakraborty, if I pick one point from your explanation is it's a cold war, a geopolitical game. Yes, we are learning this point, these terminology, last 5 months. Almost every day, frequently, many times. Is it a trade war? Is it a biological war? Is it a cold war? Ambassador Humayun Kabir, what different thought you have with those words?
Thank you. Uh, yeah, we are in a difficult patch, definitely, and a few things I think deserve mention here.
But
One thing
Ambassador
has,
Ambassador Kabir, you have well heard Ambassador Chakraborty's word. He said it's a trade war, geopolitical. It's a big geopolitical game also running on. If you do have different opinions, you can explain surely.
sure, sure. Uh, I fully agree with Pinag that this is a trade war. It has been going on even before
Even
the
before
outbreak of
COVID, yeah.
COVID-19. So it was
Yes.
there, but in January they agreed for first phase of agreement. They agreed that they should sign the first phase of their trade deal for the next few years. But that didn't materialize. Before that, the COVID came in. Now, a few things, this COVID, as I said at the beginning, that COVID has exposed a lot of things. One of the things that COVID has done is raising the question or raising the importance or urgency of transparency and accountability. President Trump, what he's asking for from
Of
China,
whom? Of whom? Of people or of governance?
everybody, because this is China is now facing that difficulty on the question, when did it know first about the outbreak, when did it notify the WHO, and when
Yes.
did it take the action to just prevent it. So these are a lot of questions that are coming in. In essence, we there is a tendency that we should hide or conceal or prevent information from flowing freely. But now
Yeah.
this information has become the real issue of international relationship, and you can see the World Health Organization review. I mean, there we saw that the impact of that flow went up to that. But here we need to be a little bit nuanced, perhaps. The US wanted more aggressive action. China didn't want it, but I would say the international community said that no, we want an investigation a thorough investigation, and so on and so forth, or evaluation, if I may put it at the language that they have used. So
Review. I think they said review.
review or evaluation, right?
Yeah.
So the issue is that now we have the one lesson that we can learn is that we have to be transparent, we have to be accountable, and we have to be responsible to each other in the international community. Number
All
one
right.
point. Number two.
All right.
Number two.
You were analyzing, picking out that USA was very aggressive for its action against China. Today we got a story, it's a special story that treated on CNN page for your better understanding, for your better discussion. May I present two lines from that story? COVID-19 has shocked the world by the speed of its spread, but it is also accelerating another global change in the balance of power and not in America's favor. Do you oppose this information, Ambassador Pinnack?
Well,
Oh yes, please go ahead, please.
should I
Yes,
go?
both of you can share. No
Okay.
problem. Yes, please. Yes,
Okay.
yes, please.
Well, the world is changing. It has been changing even before the COVID came. Now, COVID has created a situation where these are coming to a head, for example. I'm talking to my friend Pinnack. 2 days back, Indian Foreign Secretary, former Foreign Secretary Vijay Gokhale has written a piece on the evolution of Chinese foreign policy. Pinnack actually put it up on the Facebook. I got it and then I also circulated. That was an excellent piece. Now,
Okay.
what he said is that China perhaps misunderstood or misread its own capacity and overexposed itself. And now it is facing the blowback from almost from the global or international community as such. It's not the US alone. Many countries have mentioned that Chinese products, health products were substandard. They were not happy. India, many other countries, Europe, and so on and so forth. So it means that, or what it means is that China actually came away from the sage word of Deng Xiaoping that don't show yourself up. China did that, and China didn't want to, during his time, he didn't want to show the actual strength of China. And now we are seeing a completely different picture. And that has really alienated China, for example. And this is a lesson for the country.
Do you believe China has failed to manage this pandemic, the earlier stage in Wuhan? Do you believe?
Yes,
I think to be fair, that mistakes were made in understanding once the warnings came out. If you remember the famous doctor who was on social media and who said, and who ultimately died, who was the first, I think, there were one or two other cases also, that look, this is a new kind of thing that they thought it was flu, they thought it was something else, etc. And the fact that you see the virus is called a zoonotic virus. It has come from animals into the human. It has jumped from animals into human beings. Now, we don't know. Some people say it came from bats, etc. There is a Wuhan laboratory which does a lot of virus research on bat virus, by the way. And I know some people said it came out of the laboratory. Now, I'm not saying that I do not know where it came, but I think that is the review and the investigation that the world community and the international community wants to know. That what happened really, step by step. If you read President Trump's letter to the WHO Secretary General, it lists out very, very factually the kind of timelines that happened. That on this day you declared this, on this day this happened. But earlier, there were reports already that it had started in November. And it took China 2-3 months to actually warn the WHO, okay, look, this is this can be a pandemic. For example, human-to-human transmission, which is the main cause of this pandemic, was delayed by months by China because it did not report properly under the international protocols to the WHO. I mean, this is now so clear. It's clear as day and clear as sunlight that this happened. Now, this is what people are wanting China to I think cooperate in trying to find out so that in future we can avoid this. But China being China and the kind of one-party state it runs, every decision has to come from the top, and local people are not allowed to take these decisions. For example, there is one query that everybody wants to know that while China stopped internal flights from Wuhan, it allowed international flights to carry on from Wuhan. By the way, that is how it spread to Italy, because a lot of Italians went from there, a lot of Chinese went and came in from Italy and went back to Italy. And that is why Italy was one of the worst sufferers of COVID. Now, these are facts on the ground. We all know it now. There is nothing to hide. I mean, this has happened and we need to cooperate and to ensure that it doesn't happen again. And this is the problem. I think this is the crux of the issue. That is what everybody wants to know. And if China had cooperated and been transparent, maybe we would not have had such an impact of this COVID that we are facing now.
All right. Okay, the US President Donald Trump is alleging WHO to be allied with China and Chinese directives by Chinese top officials. Do you think President Trump's assessment should say, such sort of dubbing regarding WHO and Chinese bonding are logical at this point of time while we are passing, other world is passing this catastrophic disaster?
I don't think we can jump to any conclusion at the moment. I think President Trump has made his case. He's listed it out in the letter. But I do believe that the Director General of WHO, either by mistake or by misjudgment, is culpable. Because WHO is the organization which had to send out the warning.
Ambassador, are you aware of the President Trump's warning to cut funding of $500 million?
Yes, I am aware. I think that is a threat he is using. Trump is like that. He has used threats like that against, I don't know, everybody, including, I think, including his friends and in Europe and everywhere. So I think that's his style. But the threat of cutting funding is something that is a leverage. It's a threat that countries tend to use. I will stop your imports. I will put more tariffs on your goods, etc. I mean, these are all part of the sort of geopolitical sort of leverage.
Actually, it goes with him. It matches him, right? That sort of
Well, but the fact is the USA is the largest contributor to WHO.
Yeah, we cannot deny it.
Yeah,
all right.
So I think when the US is paying such a large amount of money, they have the right also to ask some questions, and I don't deny that to the US administration.
Yes, we shouldn't deny the fact. Yes, sir. 5 months into 2020, it already feels like a new era, right? Now there is only BC and AC before and after coronavirus. What do you have to say regarding this statement, Ambassador Kabir?
Which statement? I missed the
statement. It's 5 months into 2020, and it's already a new era. It's already like a new era. Now there is only BC and AC, right? The thought has in our life before and after coronavirus. I mean to say, and I'm emphasizing, the new changing world.
Well, every major event in the world generally brings in a new kind of, I would say, process or unleashes a process. So COVID-19 may have unleashed some of that process or some of the trends that were already visible now. But the question that I think, picking up from what Ambassador Pinnock has said, that yes, here the responsibility has to be fixed about how this virus devastated the international community, and it would be better to know exactly. But what is happening now, going back to you, that two things we are seeing happening now, which are noticeable. One is that the geopolitics has got mixed up with this process, and we are seeing that the divisions is becoming the global division, or utilizing this opportunity to build up a kind of geopolitical alignment is now sharpening. So for countries like us, who believe generally in maintaining relationship with all the countries, and for us it's concerning because we believe that this is a time when we should build up collaborative framework, because if we become, if we identify, if we just come strong on any particular country, alienate a particular country, then things, the problem that we are talking about may not be helped. And we must also not underestimate the fact that this is not the end of the virus. I mean, the scholars or those who are scientists are saying that the similar problem could come down the line. If we look back 20 years, we have seen SARS, we have seen MERS, and so on and so forth. So we don't know. We need global collaboration to address this kind of unforeseen challenges. So we need to also keep in mind that, well, geopolitics interest may be there to pursue, but at the same time, we cannot divide. We need to unite the international community for
Yes.
addressing this kind of situation. And the second thing is also, I should mention, looking from a domestic perspective, the whole world, in all the countries, we are talking about the external relationship, but I think the foundation of any external relationship is the domestic scenario or domestic composition of a society. Now, what we are seeing domestically, every society is getting divided. Stereotyping is being done. People are being targeted. So Zingoism is growing. So if these things happen, these will adversely affect the internal composition of all the countries. And if the internal situation becomes combustible, then it will have repercussion on the global environment as well. For example, we have mentioned, we know that President Trump's situation, it is not only that I assume that what he wrote was a sincere effort to get the facts out, but also we must not underestimate that he is in an re-election campaign, and he would like to utilize every opportunity to rally his supporters behind him. And with almost 95 now, 96,000 Americans having died, this is not an easy situation for him.
All right,
also.
all right,
So
sir. We
we are
would like
seeing a
to.
lot of things are getting mixed up.
Yes, we would like to conclude the session in a few minutes from now. But before we end, if we have, look at the coronavirus again. Has Corona really challenged the diplomatic power beyond limit? What do you think, as a professional or career diplomat? Both of you, Ambassador Chakraborty can,
It has, for example, let me take the China example. It has unleashed in China what is known as the wolf warrior diplomacy. That the Chinese ambassador, I mean, I have known Chinese diplomats throughout my career. I have never seen them behaving like this. The way they are attacking the local government, the way they are attacking anybody who's criticizing them, this seems to have been a total new change in the way they have been behaving. For example, I mean, it's become a competitive game almost, because in this kind of a social media. So they are being very, very aggressive. They are trying to pull down anybody who criticizes them. And I think this is a phase that the Chinese diplomacy is going through. It's part of their planning. I know, because in China it doesn't happen without this planning. So I think they are going through also a bit of a, as to what to do. I mean, the wolf warrior diplomacy is not going to work. It has created another backlash to, for example, in many countries where the Chinese ambassador have been rude, they have been sort of, aggressive in attacking those who are talking to them, or even asking questions. So I think this is not going in the favor of China, as far as I can see. I'm sure they will realize it soon enough, but I think this is a phase through which they are going.
But the world is really facing a big problem, right? If you know, so far, the US even just 670 crore emergency fund to address this present world situation. And who says in Africa the coronavirus may take toll of more than 1 lakh people, and maybe there is 4 crore infection expected so far. It's the projection. It's not sure who says. So as the world is coming across a catastrophic disaster, I repeat this word time and again. So the world will see unseen pain, that unseen grief among the people. Do you agree?
Oh, well, I mean, I'll come back to your question. Just give me a second. I think just picking up from what Pinack has said.
We have a question. Yes, Ambassador Kabir, we have a question. We can take this question from the audience. Says Asif Chaudhary, do you think due to COVID-19, Indian government will consider more cautiously to identify and recognizing their nationalities a revision campaign? Actually, this question is to Ambassador Pinarayi Chakraborty. Yes.
Yeah. I know what he's asking. I think he's talking about the Citizenship Amendment Act, which was being applied, and mainly it began with Assam and things like that. So I think what is going to happen is that it will. It's not going to go away because it's an act of parliament. Unless the government decides to rescind the act, it's not going to go away and it's going to be there. But I do suspect at this point in time, it may not be applied, or the rigor with which the government would have pursued this would not be as much, because this is about identifying foreigners, etc., illegal foreigners in India who are living, and with this, then it leads to the National Citizens Register, etc., National Population Register. No, these are not new things. This has happened. It's been happening. National Population Register has been part of the 10-year census ever since the census began by the British in 1871, for example. So I think these are old things, but the CAA is certainly a new thing, which amended our Citizenship Act and made a special provision for certain kinds of sort of people based on religion. Let me say that, and so that is what created the controversy.
Okay, as we are running out of time very shortly, well, I'd like to have short answer from both of you. What are the diplomatic challenges right now in front of you people, you guys who are in diplomacy? In short, I'm expecting short. Yes.
Well, taking cue from what Ambassador Pinack has said, this is a hiccup period, I might, if I may say so. We are seeing blusterings from many quarters coming in, and he has mentioned about the Chinese diplomats now. I mean, they are on the offensive, but I think they have become suddenly defensive because of the pressure coming from all around. So I think once the pressure dissipates, things could come back to normal situation. But in terms of the challenges, I think one of the challenges that we are going to deal with is the geopolitical fissure, geopolitical situation that is now taking shape. How to manage it for peacefully, I should say, and also maintain the peace momentum. Otherwise, in the post-COVID period, the whole world will have to work together. Otherwise, we might say something chivalrous at this time, but we have to acknowledge that we would need each other. And for that, the diplomacy is the only platform or forum or the process through which we can manage that necessity for each other and to collaborate with each other. So I think instead of other things, we should be more attentive to utilization or optimization of the diplomatic channel that we have and strengthen it further for building up a peaceful and inclusive world. And COVID has shown us that a divided world is a very difficult ship to navigate.
All right. In short, Ambassador Chakraborty, what are the challenges? He was sharing and, of course, suggesting collaborative approach in diplomacy. What else you have to add with?
In the world that we live in, collaboration is always a better choice. It's a better option. But then, if you have a country which has overweening ambition to become number one, to challenge the United States and become the world hegemon, etc., that China is displaying, it is obviously going to lead to certain amount of conflict. Hopefully, it doesn't sort of become a hot conflict. But look what is happening in South China Sea. We are all watching, and everybody is watching, and we are all seeing. Look what China is doing on the Himalayan border. We are facing it now. They are, of course, it's not a demarcated boundary, and it happens from time to time. I'm not trying to blow it up beyond the point. But this is what China is trying to do. It's basically throwing its weight around and it's trying to muscle into various things. It thinks it has now become so powerful that no other country, that every other country is going to go down on their knees and say that you are the emperor and we are all your subjects. That's the kind of attitude that you are seeing in China. Hopefully, this will probably abate, I think, because it cannot last, this kind of a thing. It's probably a temporary phenomena given the kind of backlash that has built up again. So I leave it at that, but I am hopeful that it's not going to last for very long.
Okay, we'd love to conclude with this hope. We love to interact with people in a close contact as a human. We love peace, not pandemic, not scared, not in a scary situation even, no death, no casualties in lumber. So we hope for the better days to come again and interact one with another very cordially. Gentlemen, thanks indeed for joining me in this talk, and I thank all the global audience for joining us. Hope to see you tomorrow at the same time, same channel. Till then, take care and definitely stay safe, stay at home, be free from COVID-19. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you, my honorable guests, for joining me again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.